make in the book, is that presidential cabinets for the vast majority of American history were just all white men. And when that was going on, nobody said, identity politics, like only white men are being chosen for this. But then if somebody comes out and says, I think we need a cabinet that looks like America, or a cabinet that is 50% female, or whatever it might be, that all of a sudden is identity politics. So to your question about whether or not—
I agree with that critique.
Right, so this is why I'm saying that
not your critique. I agree with the point.
One?
I agree with the point that it is more identity politics to suggest today that we ought to, that in today's politics, forget about 60 years ago, I agree that it was unspoken white identitarianism to have only white males at the cabinet table. Agreed. Today, if somebody says, two policies. One is whoever is most qualified gets into the cabinet. Somebody else says, I need a transgender person on this to pick my Secretary of Education, as Senator Warren recently sort of suggested. The secondary claim is to me significantly more disturbing than the meritocracy claim, no matter where things come down. Do you have any preference?
I want to hold for a minute on the first question, then I'll go to your second question, which is, my point is simply that identity politics has always been part of America.
Right, but it was kind of bad.
It's very powerful.
And it was bad.
And I don't think you're going to get it out of the whole thing, because people interact through not just the political system, but the world through their identities.
But it's one of the worst things that has happened in American history, is the unspoken white identitarianism.
I agree that it has terrible dimensions. And
this brother always comes to play, man. I don't care what I say about the guy. Y'all already know, man. I think he's a knucklehead. I think he can be a little stern at times, but all he speaks from a side that I don't particularly live by, but am now becoming more and more well-versed in by watching him speak and understanding that what he's speaking is law. What he's speaking mostly is law, right? And the side that I'm more so leaning toward is law as well, but it's more so for the people. We want to look over a couple of laws, because, like, let us go ahead and equal out some things. But there's some trouble that comes with that. Like, you can't just overlook law. All right. So I'm starting to see that. But this guy comes to play. And Ezra, I'm thinking that that's his book that's behind his arm that he keep on showing. What's it called? Polarizing. Why the world is polarizing, why politics is polarizing. I guess he's trying to, sell his book. But I'm just now being introduced to Ezra Klein. And it sounds like he's coming from the left side about identity politics. But I'm just now learning about it all. So just from where I stand right now, I don't think that you should just have to fill slots simply because a person is not represented. I'm not represented in this particular field. If it's called for, yes. If it's not called for, what's the point? So even if that's not what they're talking about, I'm learning. So hopefully we can all learn.
People interact through not just the political system, but the world through their identities.
But it's one of the worst things that has happened in American history, is the unspoken white identitarianism.
I agree that it has terrible dimensions, and I agree that it has, maybe I don't agree, but I believe it can have good dimensions.
Maybe I don't
Like
agree.
Everything in politics, it's complicated, and it can go in multiple directions depending on who's doing it and whether or not the causes are going forward stand up to some basic analysis. I think in the general question of how to build cabinets that you're bringing up there, oftentimes the way people see it is not actually that what they're doing is betraying the meritocracy by trying to make a more diverse cabinet, but actually forcing themselves to be meritocratic in building something, and also creating a world where you can be meritocratic in the future. If you've created a system where it's endlessly white privilege regenerating itself through, then it becomes very hard to have a system 20 years from now where there are enough people who've come up through the pipeline and have had their needs recognized and have had their talents seen to be able to have the kind of system that we want to have.
Okay. So, all right. Please tell me why that's not a good point that he just now made, because I'm certain you don't believe that's a good point that he just now made. For me, someone who don't really, that's new to politics and all that, I will say that he's just trying to say he don't want people to be left out 20 years from now if the same is happening that was happening then, that was happening then, and that was happening then. He said at some point we got to change the people who are able to make rules and laws moving forward so that more people can be involved in the future. For me, that sounds like no harm, no foul type of thing. To you, I want to hear exactly what you, how you take that, because you probably took that as a slap in the face or or as some form of discrimination or something like that. And I like to hear it.
Their needs recognized and have had their talents seen to be able to have the kind of system that we want to have. I think one of the places that I probably disagree. Hold on. I think one of the places I probably disagree with you.
I want to hear that. I want to hear that. Answer that, brother. Don't try to act like he ain't asked you that. What's your metrics for this? I want to hear you. What's your metrics? Also, if you like this style of content, please do me a favor and hit the subscribe button. Also, the notification bell so that the next time we post some content, you be the first to be notified.
Pipeline and have had their needs recognized and have had their talents seen to be able to have the kind of system that we want to have. I think one of the places that I probably disagree. Hold on. I think one of the places I probably disagree with you pretty profoundly in politics has to do with what do you do about historical injustice now? I think sometimes there's an effort to say, I call it sort of zero-day equality, right? As of today, things are equal. And so as of today, everything goes in the same direction. As of today, everybody gets treated equally. And then all the accumulated power, the accumulated wealth, the accumulated position in society, you just sort of wipe it away and you hope people are going to swim through that entire thing. It's why I brought up earlier this question of an African-American family with a head earner and a full-time job having significantly less wealth than a white family with an unemployed head earner, or an African-American family with a college-educated head earner having a lot less wealth than a white family with a college dropout head earner. Like, that is something where you see that there's something going on in the background there, that if you simply begin running the race right now, it is not going to be a fair race. Now, you have to handle these things carefully. I don't think anything is easy, right? My background, as you know, is as a policy reporter.
Now, you know what? I take offense to that a little bit, man, because, you know, it's being studied as an African-American and, you know, because that's essentially what's happening. People are studying African-Americans and the families that they're in so that they can compare them to other families and try to see who's further along in life and all that other stuff. Everybody will get theirs, man. Everybody will get theirs. You work your ass off, you're going to get yours. You work your tail off, you're going to get yours, man. Do people need help? Sometimes. Absolutely, people need help. But at the end of the day, if we keep on staying on this topic right here, trying to make sure that, you know, everything works out and is fair, like we want things to be fair all the time, we're slowing down the race. We're slowing down. And we're actually slowing down the conversation. We're making the conversation more and more and more boring by the minute, because the people who are working their tails off, they don't want to hear that all the daggone time. I don't want to hear it all the time, to be honest with you. I mean, yeah, I'm checking this out because I want to get more understanding of identity politics and those type of things. That's the reason why I'm checking it out. And I know these guys are good at what they do. If they weren't, we wouldn't be here looking at them. But at the end of the day, people who jump to the front of the line to defend other people that they are going off of studies to, I guess, to try to understand more, just to defend them in some type of way, it sometimes is moot. Is a moot point. Like it's like, what's the point, bro? Like, we're out here grinding. We're hustling just like everybody else. And what I get will be mine. And I'm appreciative of that. You know what I mean? What I get will be mine. Don't always need somebody to champion me and my family. We got this. We Gucci. We good. So, I mean, as long as everybody else got that type of mentality and they're willing to run the race and get out there and get what's theirs, they will get what's theirs, in my opinion. But there doesn't always have to be a gatekeeper. Like, man, make sure that there's one of you, and one of you. We need to keep it like it's supposed to be before we do anything else. That makes no sense to me.
To handle these things carefully, I don't think anything is easy, right? My background, as you know, is as a policy reporter. It is hard to fix difficult problems. Doesn't mean you shouldn't try, or doesn't mean you shouldn't see them as problems. Well,
you can see historical injustice as a problem and still recognize the limitations of government, which goes back to one of your original statements about kind of the nature of liberalism, optimism about the ability of government to get this stuff done. I mean, Lyndon Johnson specifically talked about kind of moving toward a Rawlsian equality of opportunity as opposed to the sort of equality of rights that is guaranteed under the Constitution, or should be, right? The idea that equal rights before law and equal application of the law was the basis of Americanism, and he sort of replaced that, speaking clearly, with this idea that it was not a fair race if somebody was starting off 10 yards behind, which is a nice metaphor.
Or hundreds of yards
Or hundreds
behind.
of yards behind, or 1,000 yards behind. And that's a
Or 100 years behind. 100 years behind. 200 years behind. Okay. But what are we racing to? That's the question right there. I want to know, what are we racing to? Because there's no damn race. I'm not racing any of you. I don't care to be nowhere near in front of you, and I don't think I'm behind any of you. I'm not in a race with y'all. So where I started is where I started, and where I'm headed is where I'm headed. And either y'all gonna be with me or you're not. But either way, I'm gonna make sure my family is good. That's something that I took on me. I'm gonna make sure that my family's
this
good.
idea that it was not a fair race if somebody was starting off 10 yards behind, which is a nice metaphor.
Or hundreds of yards
Or hundreds
behind.
of yards behind, or 1,000 yards behind. And that's a nice metaphor, and that's true to the extent that it's true. There's only a couple of
it
problems.
is true.
Well, when I say it's true to the extent that it's true, what I mean is that there are a couple of problems with it. One, everybody in society, to a more or less extent, is born different from everybody else in society with certain advantages and certain disadvantages. And that's accurate. Also, everybody is born either with a certain advantage or disadvantage in terms of historical circumstance. What makes you believe that either it is right and just for the government to then come in and act as a sort of godlike figure in figuring out who deserves to have something taken away from them and handed to somebody else, even if they don't necessarily bear personal responsibility for it?
Well, it's
or
not
two,
a
the
godlike
government has
figure.
the
It's a democratic figure, right? It's a figure that is imbued with the powers we give it through consent.
But you don't believe,
and I
do you believe
think
in pure majoritarianism? I mean, do you believe that
I'm a lot closer to pure majoritarianism than where we are now.
I mean, that's
Okay, what in the world is a premature majoritism? What in the world is a premature majoritism? Oh, I got to Google premature majoritism. I'm sure I'm not saying it right. Premature. Well, I'm trying to see if they mentioned premature majoritism in here. I'm sure I'm not saying it right, but I know how to read though. So if I see it, I know it's up here. Yeah, ain't nobody write anything in the comments section. They probably didn't even watch this long. They like, man, this dude is getting on our nerves. We're not gonna watch this anymore. And he still didn't say what merit that was based on.
pure majoritarianism. I mean, do you believe that
I'm a lot closer to pure majoritarianism than where we are now.
I mean, that's pretty shocking given the history of the United States.
you
Where
want
pure
a fair-
majoritarianism
you want a
was
fair-
greenlighting Jim Crow.
Wow, they was really about to get
Did
into
you
it.
know that every like on this video creates one additional leftist tear gleaming in the sunshine? Don't ask me why. That's
What? Why do you want a leftist tear to be gleaming in the sunshine? Every single time you boost my videos, somebody from the left cried. That's not nice, brother. That's not nice at all. What the hell? I want y'all to let me know what y'all thought about this conversation in the comments below. And if you have yet to hit that subscribe button, please make sure you do so on your way out the door. Once again, guys, I'm Van, and now we are all the LFR family. And I look forward to seeing you on the next video, hopefully inside the Patreon as well. Y'all have been amazing. Love y'all. Bye.